Corey, you brought this question up. Mike said he was worried. What kind of brought this to the top of your mind?
Oh, I mean, I think that we all like to play GM, and we're trying to figure out how to fix our team, even though we won a World Series. I think the most difficult thing is to win the World Series and then reassess your team and say, all right, what do we need to do? What can we do better that we were worried about all season last year? So maybe we don't have to worry about it as much this year. What can we do better for this thing? But you also have to look at your team realistically and say, are all these players going to be the same next year? What do we need to add? It's a very difficult part of the job. But I decided on a top 3 list of things.
Can I ask about the eligibility of an answer? Would watering the infield dirt count as one of your top 3?
Mike, that dirt was bad when we were out there for Jared Sandler swinging for a cause.
On Sunday.
I almost tripped.
It looked like when you go to a kid's game.
Yes.
You know, in late June. And you're just like, I know it hasn't rained in like 4 weeks, but nobody has been out here to water it. You know, like,
yeah.
And I guess it just goes to show when it's not being used, it's not being used.
It's not being used. So, but no, Kevin, I think that.
So come up with, I got 3 others.
The infield.
I got 3 others. Don't worry.
I want to throw my 3 out first. Number 1, fix pitching development in the minors. I think that's top of mind for Chris Young. He needs to get pitching. He needs to get young pitching, and they need to be able to develop these young players.
I love what you're saying. I was thinking about what you said yesterday during the show. You said you didn't want to trade Brock Porter. Not that the Rangers are even trying to trade Brock Porter, but it's like a hypothetical Juan Soto thing.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, 2 years ago, we would have said the exact same thing about Cole Winn.
Yeah,
First-round pick out of high school, and now 2 years later, like, nothing against Cole Winn. Maybe he figures it out in 2024, but Cole Winn is like off the map of being a major league pitcher for any organization. Like, he has to really this year, he has to put up an ERA, low 3s or better to be considered a major league prospect again. Like, that's just how quick it can happen for even a first-round pick. I think he was 17th overall. That, like, his back-to-back years of having an ERA around 6 or higher has just taken him off the map. I'm not saying that'll happen to Brock Porter, but to your point, Cole Winn's supposed to be in the major leagues helping the Rangers right now.
Yeah, and I guess he didn't have a win this year, Kevin, but he did have a 2.47 ERA and 95 strikeouts in A-ball.
Who's this?
Brock Porter.
Okay.
And that's where he had 8 hit by pitches. We're just going to chalk that up to.
That's good, man.
But 95
Not afraid
strikeouts.
to throw inside and hit some punks.
95 strikeouts, 42 walks. So that's a little high on the walk side for me, but he gets guys out. So I'm very interested in, like, his growth and development. But my thought is, if you fix that now, if you fix whatever the development problem is, that by the time he gets up to double and triple A, it's time to go.
To your point, the Rangers have a major issue with their budget right now. Just to be honest, I have this. We've looked at different websites. I'm on Fangraphs right now. It says estimated 2024 payroll $207 million, and that's without Kirby Yates on there. That's without, obviously, Jordan Montgomery on there. That's without adding any free agent to the team yet.
Yeah.
Is you are $30 million away from being at the luxury tax number, and that might be a major issue for the Rangers right now.
Number 2 for me was fix relief pitching, which they've started doing by getting Kirby Yates and the Carson Coleman. That's what Chris Young did say. He is a very good bullpen arm. So that's what their plan is for him. It's just the timetable for returning, but still fixing bullpen is important, and then starting pitching for me. It's those 3 things, and it all revolves around pitching, so you're not scrambling to get the Max Scherzers at midseason and the Jordan Montgomerys. I'd like to have that all right now.
So I like a lot of what you're saying. I decided to go a totally different direction with number 1, is figure out a long or midterm strategy for the TV deal. And specifically, I said long or midterm deal because short term is if Diamond decided to get out of the Rangers this season, you would revert to MLB for the rest of the season. But what are you going to be able to figure out after that? Because if you go to MLB and you stay there and they're like, hey, we'll guarantee you maybe 70 to 80%. I know they said 80 of the money. You're still talking about a potential loss of up to $33 million per year. And think about that. is like, I realize the Rangers have tons of money and hopefully are making lots of profit. But what if I told you because of this change, every single year you lost out on Jordan Montgomery? It's going to be somebody different next year or the next year after that. But if you know you have $33 million less in revenue coming in, regardless of what anything else looks like, that's a huge problem. Yeah. So my number one thing that the organization needs to address, and I appreciate everything that's happening in the winter meetings right now, is I hope they are just as feverishly trying to, whether it's, hey, we're going to do a package deal with the rest of Major League Baseball on Apple TV for 2024 and beyond, or whatever else. This needs to get figured out. I
love what you're saying because it combines with what Corey's saying without you guys saying it exactly. So I'm going to put it together. Corey says we need to develop pitching. Totally to agree. You're talking about the financial budget right now because of this. You have a 40-year-old starting pitcher in Max Scherzer. You have a guy that you're hoping that comes back this year in August in a 36-year-old Jacob deGrom. You have a 34-year-old Nathan Eovaldi on a one-year contract at $17 million, and then there's a mutual agreement of a $20 million contract. Well, if he pitches great, can you agree to that if you don't have the money? All of these guys are closer to 40 than they are 30.
Yes.
So you better start developing pitching. This is not a future team. I want to make this as clear as possible. This is not a team set up like the Atlanta Braves are set up. In their lineup, they kind of are. You think of Evan Carter and Josh Young, and Corey Seager's in his prime, and Marcus Semien is 33 years old, right? And Wyatt Langford. So you think of, yes, but pitching-wise, you're in a 1 to 2 year window of pitching, and then it's all gone. Like literally everything's gone from your rotation because these guys are closer to 40 and closer to the end of their contracts than the kind of, I know Jacob deGrom's at the beginning of his contract, but he's close to 40 years old.
Yeah.
So if you do not develop Jack Leiter, Owen White, Brock Porter, I know Kumar Rocker's not pitching in 2024, but if you don't develop these guys into people that can pitch in your rotation for $1 million a year, you're in big trouble for the future of this team being very competitive.
And that feeds directly into point number 2, and I feel bad about this, but I've made plenty of allusions to it in the past. You need to find a new senior director of amateur scouting. I think that Kip Fagg is a relic from the JD era, and it can be better. Like, there is a fundamental problem with the way we develop pitching. I will say, position players, we've been doing pretty well, but there's a fundamental issue. And if there's a fundamental issue, somewhere along the way, it starts at the top. Like, that has to be a thing. We made a lot of changes underneath, but we have kept together the same structure that JD had in place. And I fundamentally think it does not work for pitching.
I'm with you on that, man, because the history of this team goes back. I mean, he's been here for 30 years with this club. The history of this team, the history of this team says that we just struggled to create pitching in some way. It's always been that way.
It is weird. It's weird for an organization, if you really go back to 1972 when they moved, if you go to the history of the 30 teams in Major League Baseball right now, and I know some of them obviously didn't get established until the 90s, but if you go back, the Rangers, in a way, I don't want to blame just John Daniels. I don't want to blame just Kip Fagg. I don't want to just blame Chris Young. It's really weird from 1972 to 2023 that I'm going to assume that the Rangers are at the bottom of the list or close to the bottom of the list of developing premium pitchers in Major League Baseball.
And then number 3, very simple. I agree with Corey, the bullpen. Like, I'm just going to leave it at that.
And I feel like they're going to continue to try, but I feel so much more confident that you just had 2 dudes who didn't look like that guy throughout the season. And then late in the season, in the postseason, they turned it on. They became those guys. Leclerc, I think, is confident. Like, I saw the confidence in the playoffs. I saw it in the World Series. You know you can use multiple innings. And Spores look like a freaking closer out there. Yeah. So I feel confident that you have those 2. I do want to add more to it. I'm glad that they did get Yates to be part of that group.
I wonder what their plan is. I know you guys were talking bullpen, but I'm just here on Fangraphs looking at salaries. I wonder what their plan is for 2025 in a MLB starting rotation.
I don't know.
I mean, literally, you kind of have a great idea of this year, Max Scherzer, and then his career's close to over. Nate Eovaldi, and then I don't know if they're going to bring him back at 35 years old.
That's where they're probably thinking White, Porter, Leiter. We need 2 of those. DeGrom will be back and good to go.
And Porter's probably not going to be ready by 2025. I mean, as a high school pick, you're looking at more of a 4-year developmental stage.
So you're
looking more at 26 or 27 for Porter.
I don't know if they've given up on Cole. I know we've talked about this, but White, Leiter, obviously they believe in Jacob DeGrom to the moon. I understand reasons for not believing that, but
John Gray has 2 years left on his contract this year and next year.
Dunning,
you have Dunning under control for 3 more years, I believe.
All right.
Maybe 4, but
so I feel like that's probably give or take what their initial thoughts are.
Yeah.
At some point you have if you're not going to just say we're going to pay, $200 million a year to pitching, then you have to come up with the Dylan Ceases, the Spencer Striders, those guys that you have created and you have control for them for a while, and they're budding stars. And let arbitration take care of it.
Yes, yeah. And somebody said, can you talk about Cody Bradford? I feel like we've discussed him quite a bit in the Dunning category of it still depends on a couple of pivot moves. Is what's going to happen with Jordan Montgomery, but he feels like he's going to be along with Dunning in that group where there might be a real live competition going into spring training for spot number 5, depending on how the rest of the offseason goes. But he's in the mix.
I look at Andrew Heaney is paid $13 million next year. That's a starting pitcher's salary.
Yes.
That is not if that's a relief pitcher's salary, he's a setup guy closer on that salary. So I look at his salary and go, probably going to start as your 5th guy if you look at whether it's Eovaldi or Scherzer today, as we're looking at Montgomery not being on the team. I'm very worried about that. If I look at the overall salary of the Rangers, and then can you add him at $25 million next year? I just think future-wise, he makes a lot of sense. Is you don't have, besides Jacob DeGrom, you have nobody on a long-term contract here that's a starting pitcher. And I mean, to your point, Corey, you have nobody in the minor leagues that you believe is going to be a starter for the next 6 or 7 years for the Texas Rangers. It's just not working out. Owen White right now is not working out. Jack Leiter is not working out. Yeah. That could all change in 2024. Cole Winn didn't work out. I think he's off the board pretty much. And then Brock Porter's probably 2 to 3 years away of development to say, I think he can. And Kumar Rocker with the injuries, probably more of a guy that you look at as a 1 to 2 inning guy in the future.
And that's where, Kevin, that investment in that area is so important. The finding, the scouting, and then the how do you grow them.
So Montgomery, can we bring him back, please?
Look, I am very much in favor of that.